So this is the new Forerunner 265 and the 965 from Garmin, and these are basically the AMOLED display versions of the Forerunner 255 Music and the Forerunner 955 that came out last year, which use memory and pixel or transflective displays. Now, just like the 255 and the 955, both these watches are quite capable sports-focused watches that share many of the same features, like the ability to track plenty of activities like running, cycling, gym activities, pool swimming, open water swimming, and they both also have full triathlon and multi-sport support. They both have Garmin's highest accuracy multi-band satellite chipset, they both have barometric altimeters, they share the same kind of heart rate sensor, and they both provide plenty of training and performance feedback. And of course, they both have the new touchscreen AMOLED displays versus the memory and pixel or transflective displays of the 255 and 955. But the Forerunner 265 runs $449 and the Forerunner 965 runs $150 more at $599, at least here in the US. So what's the differences between these two for that $150? Well, by far the most compelling difference in terms of features is full-blown topo and landscape maps that are on the 965, which aren't on the 265. But as you may be able to tell from the length of this video, there's actually a lot of other differences that may make you want to choose one over the other. And that's my aim in this video, is to go over all the differences, both big and small, that I found between these two watches to help you decide which one's going to be right for you. And if the information in this video does help you out at all, don't be shy about hitting that like button down below. It's a small little thing that you can do to help this video and the channel quite a bit, and I appreciate it. And one more thing is, these are the differences right now as of the launch of these two watches, and things can change over time, but it's usually just more features that may be added down the road to these two watches. For the most part, the differentiation between these two should largely remain the same. Oh, and this video really is more about how these watches differ in terms of features, but I'd also encourage you to check out my full in-depth reviews of both of these two, where I went over GPS accuracy, heart rate accuracy, and tons more information about each individual watch, which I'll have those videos linked down in the description below, which you can check out once you're done over here. Okay, so let's go ahead and first start out with the hardware. So the Forerunner 265 comes in two different sizes, where the Forerunner 965 only comes in one size. There's the larger Forerunner 265 with a 46.1mm case, and the smaller 265S with a 41.7mm case, and both are 12.9mm thick, which by the way is very thin. The Forerunner 965, on the other hand, it has a 47.2mm case and is around 13.2mm thick. And for my 185mm circumference wrist, the 965 and the larger 265 fit great. Unfortunately, I don't have the smaller 265S to show you, but for example, here's how a Venue 2S looks on my wrist, which is just a hair smaller at 40.4mm. And then for weight, the 965 comes in at 53 grams, and the larger 265 comes in at 47 grams, and the smaller 265S is 39 grams. Another difference between these two is that the 965 has a titanium bezel, which adds a bit of a premium touch to it, but still, the 265 is a good looking watch and all. Like this black color that I have for you right here looks good, and I'm perfectly happy wearing it. Another difference with the hardware is that for the start or enter button, the 965 has a Garmin logo on it, where the 265 has the word run etched into the side of it. And although it's called a Forerunner, it does way more than just running, so I feel like that run word sort of pigeonholes it just a little bit. Anyhow, kind of interesting choice on their part, but the word run on the button is for the most part pretty subtle. It's not like it ever bothered me or anything like that. But what is similar between these two is that they all have touchscreen AMOLED displays, but the size and resolution is different based on each size and model, where the smaller 265S has a 1.1-inch display with a resolution of 360 by 360 pixels. The larger 265 has a 1.3-inch display with 416 by 416 pixels. And the 965 has Garmin's largest AMOLED display yet at 1.4 inches with a resolution of 454 by 454 pixels. And here's how they all look side by side. And again, apologies that I don't have the actual 265S to show you, but the Venue 2S that is shown on the screen right now actually uses the same 1.1-inch display and has the same resolution. Oh, and by the way, the watch face selection is identical between these two, where they have the same list of arguably very well-designed watch faces that showcase all the bright colors and resolution of these AMOLED displays. And I'll just go ahead and scroll through all of these right now so you can get an idea of what they have to offer. The touchscreen AMOLED displays on the 265 and the 265S are protected by Gorilla Glass 3, where the 965 uses Gorilla Glass DX. Basically, the DX on the 965 is supposed to be a little less reflective and provide a little better scratch resistance, but I didn't have issues with readability or durability during all my testing with either of these. And then related to that, they both have a water resistance rating of 5 ATM, so they're perfectly fine for showers, swimming in the pool, as well as swimming in the ocean, but you probably shouldn't go scuba diving with these. Which kind of brings us around to something that these watches do share in common, is that the displays are just slightly curved at the edges on all of these. And how this relates to durability is if you want to use a screen protector, where since these do have curved edges, you may want to look for something actually a little bit smaller than the true display diameter, or the screen protector actually won't sit completely flush. And then while we're talking about hardware, for watch bands, they all come with these cool new duotone bands, which are all nice, stretchy, and comfortable bands. However, the 265 uses industry standard bands, with the larger 265 using 22mm industry standard bands, and the smaller 265S using 18mm industry standard bands. And then the 965 uses 22mm bands as well, but these bands aren't necessarily industry standard. However, they are compatible with Garmin's Quick Fit band system, which requires these little thicker watch band pins that do come with the watch. So to use a Quick Fit band, all you have to do is just remove the stock band, and the best thing to do is use a special watch band pin tool. But once you remove the stock watch band, just slide out the pin from the band, reinsert it into the case, and then you can just snap on any 22mm Quick Fit band from there. It would have been cool if Garmin included a Quick Fit band out of the box, but switching it out takes like 2 minutes. It's really not that big a deal at all. So next up, let's talk about battery life, and all these get very respectable battery life for a watch with an AMOLED display. Typical smartwatches like an Apple Watch or a Samsung Watch get anywhere from like 1 to 3 days out of them, but with these, you can get anywhere from 4 days to a couple weeks depending on which watch and the settings. So if you want the longest battery life out of them, you'll want to use the gesture mode where the display is off when you're not looking at it or interacting with the watch, and all you have to do to turn on the display is just simply turn your wrist, tap on the screen, or press a button to wake up the display. But if you use the always on display mode, so what this does is it dims the display when it's not in use, but this can be nice to have where you can just view your watch at a glance without having to turn your wrist. You can get up to 5 days out of the 265 and the 265S, and then up to 7 days on the 965. And from all my testing over the last couple weeks while using the always on display mode, I was getting in the neighborhood of a solid 4 days out of the larger 265, and then a solid 6 days out of the 965. And that was with recording about 6 hours of outdoor activities during that time period, as well as interacting with the watches a lot, just because a lot of filming and whatnot. Your mileage may vary, of course, depending on how you use it, but still, it's very respectable battery life overall for this kind of display technology. And that does also translate to battery life for recording outdoor activities, where you could easily go for like an all-day hike, even in the highest accuracy satellite system mode, and even longer with some of the other settings. Oh, and by the way, for a real-life example of battery life for recording outdoor activities, I was actually getting slightly better battery life than their claims on both the 265 as well as the 965. So those estimates may actually be conservative, but I think they do provide a good idea of what to expect. And something else that's similar between these two related to battery life is that they both use Garmin's standard charging port, but they both do come with a newer USB Type-C charging cable versus the USB Type-A that was found before on their 255 and 955. And then on the smartwatch side of things, these are nearly identical, where they all work with both iPhones as well as Android phones, where you'll be able to receive notifications for texts, calls, and from other apps, and you'll also be able to see weather information and calendar events that you're synced from your phone. And if you have these paired with an iPhone, you'll be able to receive alerts for texts and calls, but if you have them paired with an Android phone, you'll be able to reply with predefined responses that you can customize in Garmin Connect. And the reason you can't reply to texts and calls from an iPhone is that Apple's actually locks down that functionality to just Apple Watches, and other watch brands actually can't tap into that capability when paired with an iPhone. And then in addition, all of them have Garmin Pay as well as offline music storage and playback using streaming services like Spotify, Deezer, and Amazon Music. And related to that, both also do have Wi-Fi, which is used for downloading tracks to the watch. Where they differ though is that the 265 can store up to 500 songs on the device itself, where the 965 can store up to 2,000 songs. Okay, so now let's get into the differences in terms of health features as well as sports features. And we're going to talk about a lot of stuff like daily activity tracking and health tracking, different sport profiles, onboard sensors, training and performance feedback, and of course, maps and navigation. So on the health tracking side of things, both of these come with Garmin's 4th generation Elevate heart rate sensor. They both can also track your SpO2 or blood oxygen saturation levels, and they both can also track your stress levels. And I've found these sensors to be pretty accurate, by the way, and accuracy will be the same out of either of them. But if you want to find out more details, you can actually check out my in-depth reviews of either of these watches, which I'll have linked down in the description below. And along with that, both of these can track your steps, your floors climbed throughout the day, because both of these do have an altimeter. They can track your intensity minutes, which is basically how much time you're spending doing vigorous activity. They have Garmin's body battery, which gives you an indication of your energy levels throughout the day based on your sleep, workouts, and other activity. They both have Garmin's sleep tracking that can also track your sleep stages. And then they both also have Garmin's morning report feature, which is basically this neat little feature that kind of welcomes you every morning with a breakdown of your last night's sleep, how well you recovered, as well as a weather report and other pertinent information for the day. And then along with that, both of these also can track your HRV or heart rate variability, which can give you an indication of how well your body has recovered from previous training, but it can also give other insights into your health. And then on the training and performance feedback side of things, these two are actually quite similar, since now the 265 actually gets the training readiness feature that was originally launched on the 955, which isn't available on the 255. So with both of these, you get performance feedback like having the ability to estimate your VO2 max for both running and cycling. And by the way, to get these VO2 max estimates for VO2 max for running, you need to run outside for at least 10 minutes while also tracking heart rate. And that can be either from the watch itself or an external heart rate strap. And that's for both road running as well as trail running. And then with cycling, you can do this either outside or inside, but you need to also have a cycling power meter paired with the watch, along with tracking heart rate, just like running. And then both of them can also provide lactate threshold. And then they both also can have a race predictor, which can give you estimates on times that you could potentially achieve for common running race distances based on previous training. And both of them also do have Garmin's fitness age metric. So what this does is provide maybe a little bit easier to understand figure than VO2 max in regards to your performance level based on your current age. And then both also do have training status, which gives you an indication of how your training is progressing over time. And this is based on numerous factors, including your VO2 max trends, heart rate variability status, your training load focus, which is basically how much time you're spending training in different heart rate zones, as well as recovery time. But the 965 also provides a few additional data points. So the first of which is a new load focus feature, which compares your current or acute training load over the last 7 days or so with your longer term or chronic training load over the last 4 weeks or so. And then along with that, the 965 also has an altitude acclimation feature as well as a heat acclimation feature, which gives you an idea of how well you're acclimatized to your current altitude, as well as heat acclimation, which gives you an idea of how well you're adapted to training in heat. The heat acclimation feedback actually hasn't shown up for me quite yet on the 965 because it's still currently winter in Colorado, but this starts to appear in warmer and hotter conditions. But something that's similar between the 265 and the 965 is that they both have Garmin's training readiness feature. And this is actually a new feature that was added to the 265 and a difference between the 255 and the 265, as the 255 won't be getting this feature via software update because the 265 is being positioned as a slightly more premium offering than the 255 since it does have a higher price tag. But the training readiness feature provides basically a really easy to understand figure about how ready you are for your next training session. But this is based on numerous factors, including your last night's sleep, current recovery time, heart rate variability status, acute training load, sleep history, as well as stress history. Okay, so now let's talk about sport profiles. So both of these track all the common activities like both running indoors and outdoors. Both have cycling profiles, both indoors and outdoors as well. Both have plenty of gym profiles. Both can track pool swimming as well as open water swimming. Both have triathlon and multi-sport modes. Both have a good selection of outdoor recreation profiles like skiing, snowboarding, hiking, stand-up paddleboarding, and much more. Where these differ though is that the 955 has some additional cycling profiles like gravel biking and cyclocross. There's also difference in outdoor recreation profiles where the 965 has backcountry skiing, kayaking, tennis, and disc golf. There's also indoor climbing and bouldering, which are only on the 965. And then there's some additional navigation profiles like mapping as well as navigating. But there are a couple small details I wanted to point out with a few of the activity profiles though. So although both the 265 and the 965 have an ultra run profile, the 965 has an ultra run rest timer feature. So what you can use this for is to separate out rest periods during your ultra versus your moving time. So rather than just pressing pause during your rest periods, you can press the lap key, which initiates a rest period. And then when you get going again, you can press the lap key again to end that rest period. Oh, and by the way, this works either by manually pressing the lap key, but this rest period can also be automatically triggered if you just come to a stop. And then all this information is broken down for you in Garmin Connect. And that's not only for your total rest time, but it's basically broken out kind of like laps where it gives you a breakdown of each rest period. So you could easily use this information to maybe better plan for the same ultra the next year. And then another little detail I wanted to point out is with the mountain bike activity profile. So although both of these do have that profile, the 965 also collects Garmin's grit and flow mountain bike metrics. So grit is basically how hard the ride was in regards to terrain. So if your ride had a lot of elevation gain and a lot of rough terrain, it gives you a higher grit score. And then with flow, this is more of an individualized metric where this indicates how well you're maintaining momentum on your ride. So if you're riding consistently without much stopping or anything like that, your flow will be better. And by the way, a lower number is better with flow, kind of like golf, I guess. But if you're stopping a bunch, your flow score may not be as good. Oh, and while we're on the topic of golf, the 965 also has a golf activity profile, but this isn't just as simple as tracking the distance or route that you took while hitting the greens. These integrates Garmin's full-blown golf maps, and I believe they have like thousands and thousands of courses across the world or something like that. But these maps provide a ton of detail, and using them in conjunction with GPS positioning, it can actually give you information like the distance to the pin and stuff along those lines. And the 965 can also pair up to the dedicated Garmin Golf app as well. And I actually used to play golf kind of in a different lifetime, so I'm not an expert on this topic or anything like that, but for those of you who do, this can be a big difference between the 265 and the 965. Okay, so is everyone still with me? If you need to pause the video and go get some coffee and come back, please do, because we still have lots more to cover. Plenty of differences, right? And then for the outdoor activity tracking side of things, both the 265 and the 965 come with the same multi-band satellite chipset, which can access numerous satellite systems, but can also access 2 different satellite frequencies at one time, which can lead to increased accuracy around really challenging environments, like really tall buildings, heavy tree cover, or tall rock faces. But they both also come with their auto select or sat IQ mode. So what this does, rather than just using the multi-band mode all the time, which requires more battery life, the sat IQ or auto select mode automatically switches between different satellite modes based on the quality of the satellite signal wherever you're at. So if you're out in the wide open with no obstructions, it'll likely use something like the GPS only mode. And then if it starts to recognize less of a quality satellite signal, it'll switch to one of the higher accuracy modes and basically results in longer battery life. And the accuracy of these two, again, just kind of like the heart rate sensor, are going to be identical, and both are also very accurate. And more details, again, about the accuracy in my in-depth reviews of each of these. And speaking of outdoor activities, let's now dive into the biggest difference between these two watches, the full-blown topo and landscape maps that are found on the 965 but aren't on the 265. So with the 965, it comes with worldwide topo and landscape maps that are loaded onto the device. So with these sort of maps, it's basically kind of like a Google Maps or Apple Maps type of thing, where you can see all sorts of detail, like not only streets and trails, but the actual names of those streets and trails. And along with that, there's also landmarks like bodies of water and mountain peaks. There's topographical information. Then there's even Garmin's ski maps that literally show actual ski runs and chairlifts to help you get around the mountain. And the maps also allow you to use the Around Me feature, which shows you points of interest in different directions from your current location. And these include everything from landmarks, parks, toilets, and yes, even a Starbucks to get your coffee fix. And then the 965 also has Garmin's Next Fork feature. So what this does is that when you're on a trail, it gives you the information of the next fork in the trail, as the name implies, but it also gives you the distance to that next fork. Now, although the 265 doesn't have these full-blown topo and landscape maps, for point of reference, pun intended, not many other watch manufacturers actually have this feature either. And until just recent years, we've all just been doing just fine without this feature, but it certainly is a nice to have, and likely a really nice to have depending on what kind of activities you like to do. Now, in regards to navigation, both the 265 and the 965 do have the ability to import routes onto the device for navigation, but the difference, of course, is going to be how these courses look in conjunction with the maps. So with the 265, these will be breadcrumb style routes where it gives you a line that you need to follow along with a directional arrow, and it uses the onboard GPS for positioning as well as the built-in compass for orientation. And again, this kind of navigation capability has been around for years and years, and plenty of people have done just fine with it, but there's a big difference when you use navigation with maps. So this is what it looks like with maps, and as you can see, it's certainly a difference here where you have context of where you are in addition to the breadcrumb route. But what's similar between these two in regards to navigation is that they both have a back to start feature to help you navigate back to your start location, either by backtracking the route that you took or the most direct route possible. And along with that, they both also do have Garmin's up ahead feature. So what you can do with this feature is when you go to create a route in Garmin Connect on a web browser, well, what you can do is define different points on your route for important points like maybe bathrooms, food drops, coffee shops, shelters, or really anything else that you want to reference during your activity. And what this does is basically pops a little screen on your watch during activity, letting you know the distance to those custom defined points of interest. And this just basically can be super handy to have, just to give you an idea of just how long it's going to take to get to that well-earned Frappuccino. But there are a couple of routing specific features that are just on the 965, including a round trip course creator for running and cycling. So what you can do here is, let's say you're somewhere that you're not familiar with, and you just want to do a quick 5-mile run or 10-mile run or something like that. So what you can do is just ask the watch to give you a 5-mile route, and it calculates a couple different options based on information it has built in regards to routes, roads, or trails that other Garmin users have frequented around that area based on popularity. And then another navigation specific feature that's only found on the 965 but isn't on the 265 is something called Climb Pro. So when you load in a route on the 965, what this does is it breaks down all the climbs on that route. And when you approach a climb, up pops a screen that gives you kind of the details of that next climb, like the distance as well as the elevation gain. But along with that, you'll also see indication of different grades on the climb. So green indicating more flat ground, yellow indicating a more gradual hill, and then red meaning, oh my God, my legs are burning. But this really is a pretty cool feature though, where it gives you an idea of kind of like, well, how much suck is left on that climb, and can help with managing efforts to make sure that you don't blow up on the first portion of the climb, only to be tapped out before the summit. And what's nice about this too is that it gives you a breakdown of all the climbs on your entire route. And then for one more minor navigation feature that is only found in the 955, it also has dual grid coordinates. And for some running specific features, both the 265 and the 965 can collect advanced running dynamics from the wrist itself, and these include data points like vertical oscillation, vertical ratio, ground contact time, as well as wrist-based running power. And I have an explanation of these different data points and how they could potentially help you in my 265 video, I believe. And then they also both have Garmin's Pace Pro feature. So what this does is that you can create a pacing strategy for your next workout or race. And you can do this for either simply a race distance, but also a specific course if you'd like. So like here, I'm just going to go and choose a race distance, like let's say a 10K, and then I enter in either a goal time or average goal pace. And you can choose either one here and it'll automatically update the other metric. And then from here, you can define your specific pacing strategy. So you can stay at a consistent pace throughout. You can start out hot right out of the gate, or you can define negative splits. And then you can see at the bottom how it breaks down each split. And then all you have to do is click save and send it over your watch. Will be saved to the watch on your next sync. And then from here, you just go ahead and choose Pace Pro in the run settings under your training menu. And then during your run, it gives you a Pace Pro specific data page indicating how well you're following your pacing strategy and whether you're ahead or behind. And then another training related feature that's just on the 965, but it's not on the 265 is Garmin's real-time stamina feature. So what this does is that it's kind of like a real-time body battery sort of feature during a running workout or a cycling workout with a power meter. So your stamina number that you see at the top of the screen is basically like how much energy you have left in the tank at a given point in time, whereas your potential stamina in the lower left-hand corner is kind of like your entire gas tank. And this feature is kind of easier to explain with something like intervals. So you basically start out any workout with the same stamina and potential stamina. And as you start to increase heart rate along with power and pace, your stamina will decrease, but so will your potential. How you can think about this though is that during a sprint or interval, you can only go so long before you kind of have to tap out at that higher intensity. That's what that top figure of stamina is trying to indicate. So both your stamina and potential will decrease during each interval, but the difference here is that when you let off and recover from the interval, your stamina up top will start to increase as you recover. And then another cycling related feature that's just on the 965 is a feature called Power Guide. So this is kind of similar to the Pace Pro feature for running. So again, just like the Pace Pro feature, what you'll do is set up a Power Guide strategy in Garmin Connect. But with Power Guide, you do have to choose a course or a route. From there, you'll enter in your bike weight and gear. You'll choose the body position during your ride. And then from here, you can create your strategy for the ride. And this is all in relation to the route, especially in regards to the elevation gain. So you can see here where on hilly sections, that's going to require more power than the downhills. And what you can do is define the desired effort level for that ride. And what this aims to do, just kind of like Pace Pro, is help you manage your effort during your ride to either keep you on track for desired general completion time or your desired average power output during your ride. And then on the external sensor side of things, both of these pair with quite a big list of external sensors, from external heart rate straps to speed and cadence sensors for cycling. They pair with cycling power meters, smart bike trainers, foot pods, vario radar and lights, e-bikes, as well as temperature sensors, amongst many other things. However, the 965 can also pair with Garmin's inReach satellite communication devices. It also can pair with electronic cycling shifting, including Shimano Di2, and it can also pair with muscle oxygen sensors. Oh, and then in regards to cycling power meters, although both of these can pair with cycling power meters to collect power, the 965 can also collect additional advanced cycling dynamics like left and right power balance. There's power phase, which can give you an indication of where in your pedal stroke you're generating power, as well as pedal platform offset, which can show you which side of the pedal you're applying more pressure with a compatible power meter like Garmin's own Rally pedals. Okay, we are on the home stretch now, and if you've made it this far into the video, you're going to know a lot about these two watches. So on the safety and tracking side of things, they both have live track, where you can send a link of your activity to others so they can follow along your activity in real time. There's also instant detection, where it can attempt to automatically detect if you're involved in a crash or something like that during an activity, and then it'll send out an alert to your emergency contacts. They also have an assistance feature where you can send out an alert manually to an emergency contact with your location, but the 965 also has their group track feature. So what this does is that if you have friends or family who also have a Garmin device that has group track capability, you'll be able to see them on a map when both of you are recording outdoor activity at the same time. But just note, with all these safety and tracking features, they do require you to have your phone with you because neither of these have cellular capabilities like the 945 LTE. And then finally, to wrap things up, the 965 also has Garmin live segments, as well as compatibility with Strava's live segments, where you can see your position in regards to leaderboards, as well as your current PRs on different predefined segments. All right then, well, I think that's probably it, but to kind of wrap things up, although maps is the biggest and most compelling difference between these two, there's actually plenty of other differences as well. Now, it's not to say that the 265 is a basic watch by any stretch of the imagination. It actually packs in a lot of features for the money, and honestly, it's going to work well for plenty of you out there. It's just that yes, the 965 comes with more, but it also has a higher price tag. A much higher price tag? Well, $150 more isn't a small amount of money, but $150 more for those additional features, that's obviously a little bit more up for you to decide whether it's going to be worth it. And of whether you can benefit from those features, but I hope this video kind of helped outline all the big and small differences to help you decide which one's going to be right for you. And if it did help you out, help me out and just hit that like button down below. And while you're down there, make sure to subscribe for lots more sports tech videos that are right around the corner. Thanks so much for watching and plugging away through this video, and we will see you in the next video.